are going to be sharing our January wrap-up. We're going to try to be quick with this, not, dwell for too long on the details. So, let's get started. I'll go first.
You go first.
Okay, my first book I read this month was Saint by Adrienne Young. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. And this is a prequel to the Fable duology. And while this is a prequel, there's absolutely no reason why you can't read it after Fable. You can also read it before if you want. I feel like this was almost written for the fans and follows Fable's father, Saint, whose name is actually Elias, we find out in this book. And he's just it's like a coming of age story for him and how he kind of rose to the top within the Narrows as a trader, how he met Fable's mother, etc. My one complaint with this is I wish it was longer because it just felt a little rushed towards the end. And I feel like this could have been 2 books, more drawn out, or maybe she'll make another one. That would be cool. But yeah, overall, if you love Fable, you'll definitely love this book.
And what did you give it?
I said 5 stars.
Oh. Okay, the first book I read this month is Crown of Midnight, which is the second book in the Throne of Glass series. I won't say too much about this book since it is a second book in a series, but this picks up right where the first book left off. Selena, however you say her name, has been deemed the king's champion, and so now she kind of has to live with everything that entails, which is basically to do all of his dirty work. So, as she's doing these things, she starts learning some secrets about the castle, about what's going on there, about her friend Dorian, etc. It's action-packed. I was happy to pick this series back up after a very long hiatus, and I gave it 4 stars.
Okay, my next book I don't have a physical copy of, and that is 99 Days by Katie Cotugno. I'm not really sure how you say it. I gave this book 1 star. And if you want more information, I'm not going to spend too long on this. I read this book for a video we did, which was reading Haley Pham's top books of 2022. So if you want to know more about that and the books we read for that video, you can check it out. Overall, I just didn't like it. I didn't connect with any of the characters. I wasn't rooting for them. I wasn't hoping anything would go well for them. I just want to be done. And so for me, I find myself rating books based on enjoyment, even if they do have problems. If I really loved it and had a good time while I was reading it, 5 stars. And the enjoyment level was just non-existent. So, 1 star.
Okay. So I picked up this because of that video she mentioned. And so as soon as I was done with that, I was like, I gotta keep going. So I picked up Heir of Fire, which is where I left off the last time I read the Throne of Glass series. But this book is definitely my favorite out of the 3 so far. I loved the new developments that take place, where she's learning more about herself and her history and her past and family and abilities. And this was just a great time. This just made me commit to this series. I'm fully committed now, mainly because I really like the character that is introduced in this book, Rowan. If you know, you know.
Okay, hold on. She texted me one night when she was reading this book.
I forgot about that.
I hate Rowan. And something else too about him. And then literally before I even responded, I got another text that said, never mind.
Never mind, I like him now.
And
he's just one of those characters who has a lot of personal growth. They seem prickly on the outside, and he is, for sure, still in some ways, but, you learn more about why he's being that way, and Anyways, it's so good. And I'm just, like I said, fully invested in this series now. Like, this solidified continuing for me. So, I gave this 5 stars.
Okay, my next book I read was Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. This is the first memoir I've ever read, and I don't think anything can beat it for me. Something about this was just so fun to read. Like, I was never bored or trying to get through it, and I don't read nonfiction at all. So if that tells you anything, you should read it if you're a fan of Harry Potter. There's like pictures in this book of just him throughout his life. There's so many things that I didn't know about him now, even in his life now, that I'm so glad I do. It was definitely a very emotional story. Just learning about his childhood. The before and after of Harry Potter was definitely the most interesting to me, because I think it just, characters, actors, actresses are popular, you know, when these movies were coming out, and then sometimes that doesn't mean you get work for the rest of your life, and you would think you would after something as popular as that, but seeing him struggle with that was also very emotional, and just, it was great. So 5 out of 5 stars. I would read anything he writes.
I just realized I didn't really go in the order I read these in, but that's okay. The first book I actually read this month was Running Wild by K.A. Tucker. I don't have a copy of it. We'll insert a picture somewhere.
I will.
This is the 3rd and final book in the Wild series, except this book doesn't follow the main characters of the other 2.5 books. This follows a character who's introduced in the others, but not as a main character. Her name is Marie. She's a veterinarian in the Alaska frontier, and so she's kind of like recovering from her years of pining for Jonah, who's the main character in the other books, who end up with someone else. And so she's like, maybe I'm just destined to be alone. Maybe I'm just supposed to focus on my career. And then she meets a guy, I can't remember his name right now, but like they have a rough start, like a bad first impression. And so like over time they kind of redeem themselves from that bad first impression, and he has a lot of baggage from his previous relationship and just a lot of things. But what I really liked about this book and all of these books in particular is just the setting of it being in Alaska, in a very remote location, learning about just life in Alaska and how things are so different, how they have to survive in such cold temperatures and what they have to do. But also what was really endearing about this story is Marie's relationship with her parents and her siblings. And I just thought she did a great job of writing that into the story. So I really enjoyed this book, and I actually didn't think I would like it as much as the others because I'm very partial to Jonah and Calla, but I did give this book 4 stars.
Okay, my next book I, again, don't have a physical copy of, and that was The House Across the Lake by Riley... I still can't say his name right.
Sager.
Sager. I always want to say Sager. He's not a nerd. That's fine. Anyways, I, again, read this book for the Haley fan video, and I gave this book 3 stars. It was my first Riley Sager book. And I definitely see why people have mixed opinions on it. It was just... What? You good?
Excuse you.
It was just for me. I don't know. I will definitely pick up another one of his books in the future if one piques my interest, because of the controversy with The House Across the Lake. The ending just fell flat for me, so I think that's why I give it 3 stars.
Okay, the next book I read is The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. Hepworth, yeah, that's how you say it. I was like, did I say that wrong? This book hasn't actually come out yet. It comes out in April, but I did receive a digital arc of this book from NetGalley, and I don't know, just something about the premise of this book when I was scrolling through NetGalley really grabbed my attention, and I'm really glad I requested it, because this is one of those books, like, the more I've thought about, the more it stays with me, and kind of just the overall concept of it is very intriguing. So it's about a couple or a young family that lives atop this cliff in Australia, and their house and this cliff is actually known across their community for being like where people go to try to commit suicide. So, I mean, like, imagine living somewhere where you're like, oh, my home is where people go to commit suicide. Why would you live there in the first place? I don't know. But so, like, over time, her husband, the main character's husband, becomes notorious for, like, talking people off this cliff and, like, talking them out of their decision to commit suicide. But at the very start of this book, there's a woman who comes there. She sees from her kitchen window that there's this woman, like, lingering on the edge. So her husband, like, rushes out to try to keep her from doing that, except she actually does. So this kind of unravels a very lengthy problem, because what the husband doesn't tell the wife right up front is that they actually know this woman. And so, like, the more the wife starts suspecting, like, this is a little too weird, like, why wouldn't he tell me that from the beginning, the more she starts to suspect that maybe, like, he had something to do with it. And so it, like, goes back and forth from the past to the present. This book very much gave me Sarah Pinsborough Behind Her Eyes vibes, because of just, like, all the layers involved, all the characters involved, the past and present timeline. But the ending was like, whoa. It was not what I expected. But I gave this book 4 stars, and I think if you are a mystery, thriller, suspense, psychological thriller lover, you would really enjoy this book.
Okay, my next book was Defend the Dawn by Bridget Kimmerer. I gave this book 4 stars. I'm still salty because I thought this was a duology. It's a trilogy. And so...
She pulled like a Stephanie Gerber.
Yeah, I kind of thought that would be a trilogy though, but she just wouldn't tell us. But this, I feel like this book dragged on to make it a trilogy. Like, I understand that there's still a lot of problems, but this book could have been like maybe 3/4 of the book, maybe even half. It was slow, and I really enjoyed it when I was reading it, but looking back compared to the pacing of the first one, I feel like it was slower. But this, I'll just give a brief synopsis of the first book, Defy the Night, because anything I say about this will spoil that. But it follows Tessa, and there's like, I hate to use this word, but there's a pandemic essentially going on, and I feel bad for this author because I know she wrote this before COVID, so probably turned a lot of people off from reading it. But basically, it's like the kingdom's on brink of rebellion. All the higher class people are getting the medicine for this pandemic, and no one else really is. She's an apothecary, and she has this friend named Wes, and they go deliver elixirs that they make themselves at night, sneak around, trying to help these people that can't afford it, don't get it. And so it was definitely a little hard to read because I read it in like 2021. Living in Washington, we were still very much under
lockdown,
COVID restrictions, but now that we're kind of out of that, I would highly recommend it. Dual timeline, not timeline, POV, which I love. So, yeah, 4 stars.
Okay, the next book I read was the second book I read in the the video we made for the Haley Fam top books, and that was Dial A for Aunties, and I just I did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. I'll just say that up front. So this book, like, you know, going in, if you read the synopsis or if you've heard anyone talk about it, it's pretty, like, far-fetched to begin with. So this girl goes on a blind date. Her mom sets her up with this guy. She goes on the blind date, and she accidentally kills him. And so instead of, like, you know, calling the police or doing the right thing, she pops him in the trunk and drives home to mom and is like, there's a dead body in the back of the trunk. And her mom's like, no, there's not. This is a joke. And so then her mom proceeds to call her aunties. And so they are this whole book trying to figure out how to dispose of this body. Which I get, like, okay, going in, you know it's going to be unrealistic. But the amount of things that just kept compiling, making it more and more and more unrealistic, I just couldn't even get past. Like, at one point, spoiler alert, they're dragging this dead body across a hotel lobby in a cooler. Like, would anyone in their right mind do that in real life? And this book is contemporary. It's set in present day. There's no, like, fantasy elements involved. They're not throwing on invisibility cloaks. They're just walking right through the middle of the hotel lobby, toting around a cooler with a dead body in it. Like, and then, like, as the story progresses, it's like making my head hurt because it's so unrealistic. Then there's, like, this other plot twist that adds on to the amount of unrealistic things in this book. And I couldn't get past it. Like, it was a little funny here and there, but, like, the amount of comedy to me was not the amount that was needed for me to overlook the amount of unrealistic things happening. So, I don't know. And I've heard people say, like, the second book is bad. Like, everyone agrees the second book is bad, even if they like the first. So if the second book is bad, to the people who think the first is good, like, how bad would I think the second book is? I'm not even gonna, like, attempt to pick that up. But that was Dial A for Aunties. 2 stars.
Okay, my next book, Buddy read this next, and that is Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. I gave this 4 stars.
I think I did too.
Okay. It's just, I really, really enjoyed this. If you don't know, this is a prequel to the Throne of Glass series. There's 2 ways to read this. You can either read it chronologically, so you read this book first, then pick up Throne of Glass. Or the other recommendation, which is the one we did, is reading this book after Heir of Fire. I actually read this book after Queen of Shadows because I didn't own this and I owned Queen of Shadows.
Yeah.
But it definitely would have been helpful going into Queen of Shadows, knowing all of this. And it's basically a collection of short stories.
I think there's 6.
Yeah, 5 or 6. And it leads all the way up to the point of where Throne of Glass starts. And there's a lot of characters in this that I have a feeling are going to be introduced
back into the series.
Yeah. And so I would have liked to know about them before Queen of Shadows. So if you're, like, on the fence, is this important? Yes.
So I haven't read Queen of Shadows, and I was, like, as I was reading this, I was already making, like, predictions about, like, I bet this person does this. Not necessarily in Queen of Shadows, but just, like, I can see them, like, how they're going to be reintegrated into the story. So I thought that was cool. It was a little hard for me to read this because I'm really just wanting to, like, get to where Heir of Fire left off, because this leaves, like, on a kind of a cliffhanger. But I still enjoyed it. Like, there were some stories I definitely enjoyed more than others. Some characters I enjoyed learning about more than others. But overall, it was pretty good.
Have a box of tissues. I'm not going to say what happens, but if you've read even the first Throne of Glass book, you know what happens in this book, and it broke my heart, even though I knew what was going to happen. So,
yeah.
Assassin's Blade, it's worth it. I'm just going to talk about this manga I read really fast. I don't have a physical copy. I was wanting this other manga. They didn't have it digitally anywhere, so I picked up this other one. I'm going to attempt to pronounce it. I believe it's Just
say that other part.
Bed and Breakfast for Spirits, Volume 1. I'm sorry. But I don't really know how to rate this because it was my first manga, so I don't know, like, what's right.
I would just rate it on how much you enjoyed it.
I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, but it was also my first manga. I'm not used to reading in that style or that pace, so that could have been why, but I definitely enjoy the culture and all those kinds of things. So I'd say if you're looking for a more cozy manga, check it out. I will be continuing the series.
Okay, the next book I picked up was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. If you don't know what this is about, this follows Jennette McCurdy, who is a childhood actress since the age of 6, and it's called I'm Glad My Mom Died because she is. So from the age of 6, her mom kind of forced her into this acting world because her mom wanted to live vicariously through her. Her mom always wanted to be an actress, but her parents wouldn't let her, so she's like literally living vicariously through Jennette McCurdy. Her mom was mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually abusive to her. This book was, I was telling Emmalynn, I don't even think I can rate this book because I'm not sure it's fair to rate someone else's, like, life story. I will say the first half of this book I enjoyed more than the second half. I think it's easier it was for me to, like, I have empathy for her in general, but the second half of the book, to me, she included some things that I think were just, like, too personal. I don't think contributed to the book at all. I will say there is sexual content in this book, and she goes into some pretty graphic detail about some of her sexual experiences, which I don't want to know about. Like, I don't feel like that's something you need to share with the world to get the point across about your relationship with your mom. But that's just my opinion. Overall, I mean, I think her writing the story was brave. I don't think everything she told was necessary to tell her story. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it either, because I feel like that would be kind of morbid, but I did find it interesting, and I feel like it will be beneficial to a lot of people to read, especially her talking about her struggle with eating disorder and her recovery from that. So I'm not going to give a rating for this, but that is I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Okay, my next book is Gallant by V.E. Schwab, and I don't know what I was expecting with this. I feel like not a lot of people love this book as much as her others. I don't know if it's because it's YA, and she is, I feel like anyways, more widely known for her adult novels. This was just not what I was expecting. It was way more chill than her other books, and I saw Jesse the Reader's review on Goodreads, and he was like, we need more chill V.E. Schwab books. This was good. I gave this book 4 stars, and this follows Olivia, and she is an orphan living in this, I guess it's an orphanage, but also, like, you know, a school and everything. I mean, she's just there all the time. One day she gets this letter that's from her uncle saying, you know, you're going to come to Gallant, you're going to live with your family again. And she's like, this is going to be great. I don't like it here. But her mom actually left her a journal. Her mom, I'm not going to really talk about her parents, is like most of the mystery of this book. But one thing that her mom always says in the journal is, you'll be safe if you stay away from Gallant. And that's where she's going. So it's kind of like Haunted Mansion vibes. There's like 2 sides to the house, hence the cover. It was just really good. It was like cozy in a really weird way. I mean, there was ghouls, she could see them, ghosts of the house, but I don't know, I really liked it. And one thing that was cool about this book is Olivia is, I don't know how you would say this, but like she doesn't speak. She's not deaf. She can hear, but she can't speak. And so there was a lot of like sign language representation. She would draw a lot to get the point across, and one of her family members can't read, so their relationship and how they communicated I think was sweet, and how they navigated that. But overall, 4 stars. I love the illustrations in this book, the journal entries. I love books with just multiple formats. So yeah.
Okay, the last book I read this month, I actually finished it last night, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I actually received this book as a digital ARC before it came out on NetGalley, and I didn't finish it before it came out, obviously, but like I was probably about 20%, 25% in, and I was like, you know what? I really think this is a book that I want to own, and I'm so glad we skirted on to Barnes & Noble. This is the last copy, and this is definitely a book that I want to keep forever. I absolutely loved it. Can we talk about
beautiful.
how Heather Fawcett with this naked hardcover, like, I wish more authors did this with hardcover books. The spine is also really pretty, but this book is just so interesting. Like, it's unlike anything I've ever read. Her writing style is very descriptive and lyrical. I will say, like, because our main character is a professor at Cambridge, her way of speaking and her vocabulary is very expansive. So this isn't a book that you can, like, I mean, this is adult fantasy for a reason. It's not a book that you can just kind of like read with half-heartedness. Like, you really have to pay attention. There's a lot going on in this book, a lot of folklore that comes into play, a lot of like history that comes into play. But I absolutely loved this book. So this follows Emily Wilde, who is, like I said, a professor at Cambridge. She is traveling to this kind of remote winter land to try to finish her book, which is an encyclopedia of fairies. So she is a professor of fae studies, basically. And so this winter land that she decides to go live in for a few months is kind of known for having like very unique type of fairies and fae, and potentially like high fae. And so she comes there looking for certain things, and boy does she find them. And just the characters in this story that live in this village are just really endearing and just like wholesome. And I don't know, I just really, really love this book. Like, it's definitely, I mean, this is my second favorite book I read this month, I will say. Probably because Air of Fire is just more action-packed, but as far as writing goes, I would say this is probably my favorite. And it ends on, not really a cliffhanger, but it just like ends. Like, there's no closure, no beautiful letdown. Like, it just kind of ends. So, I mean, if you don't know, this is the first book in a series. So, hopefully the next one picks right back up where this left off, because I want to know what even happened in the scene that was, like, still going, I thought. So, I need to know. Anyways.
Okay, my next and final book, kind of going off of that, is Heart of the Raven Prince by, I'm totally going to butcher this, Tessania Odette. And this, if you don't know, is a part of a series you can read out of order. They're standalones, fairy tale, princess retellings, and this is the Cinderella one. So it's just princesses mixed with fae, retelling. It's great. If you don't know, all of this author's books, from what I've found, they're all on Kindle Unlimited. So I was about to like go out and buy this book, and I could read all of them for free, which is very dangerous because I already started another one in the series.
Well, that shows how much you liked it.
Yeah. I don't really feel like I need to give a synopsis of this book. Everyone knows the story of Cinderella, and I feel like the spin on it is best found out while you're reading it. I really enjoyed this book and the series. The one thing I didn't like, this is like nitpicky, but the map really bothered me because it's like wind, water, fire. Like, there's not any fancy, pretty names for the courts or kingdoms. And, like, all these fae have, like, really pretty names. And this book is, like, beautifully written, very lyrical. And then the courts are, like, fire. Like, I feel like we could have been a little more creative. There's just, I don't know. For how many fae books there are, gotta be a little original. So,
set yourself apart.
Yeah. And so that's definitely nitpicking. That doesn't affect the story at all. But just for how good it was, I feel like it deserved a better map and everything. So I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars. But yeah, that's all the books we read in the month of January. Be sure to check out our February TBR video if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.